If she loves, I don't care, just as long as she'll dance. Once this night has passed on, still its memory shall last. Hold her hand, in a daze, drift away as music plays. That's one of my own. I thought we'd begin with a couple of mine. The next one is called, I don't have a title for the first one. The next one is called A New Stage. Now, imagine a young boy of 12 or 13 sitting with his dad on a park bench. They've just been to the local chippy and have on their laps a fish and chips for the father, a battered sausage roll and chips for the younger. They skipped on the mushy peas. They're sitting in the harbour side and on a bench. The father relaxed. The young boy's feet don't touch the ground and his legs are swinging underneath him. And age 12 or 13, he is beginning a new stage, hence the name in life, the stage of romance and amorous affection. So a new stage. What is love? Asked the son as he sat with his dad. A new stage had begun, though he was still a lad. He had noticed the curls of a beautiful girl, and she moved with a twirl, and her eyes were like pearls. Dad, at school I get bored, and it's her that I miss. At her sight I'm restored, and with her life is bliss. What it is, I don't know, but I don't want it to go. And these feelings I feel, there's no doubt that they're real. And his dad listened close, for he loved his dear son. On his face was a smile, for he knew this day would come. Love is true, love is pure, love is real, that's for sure. And I hope that you know I love you. I'm closing the door. So that's my flatmate, Byron. Yeah, let her in. So there you go. Two poems by myself. Muffin's going slightly mad, aren't you, Muffin? Just relax. Okay, so, and then last but not least, a poem by a much superior author, Rudyard Kipling, who wrote The Jungle Book. Sort of pith helmet wearing colonialist who was a very good man despite everything. It's called If. You'll probably be familiar of it, especially the last line. What is the last line? 60 seconds mirth of distant run. Yours is the earth and everything in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. Anyway, so that's where we're headed. But it's called If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and meet those two impostures just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk them on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe one word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve their turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will that says, hold on, hold on. If you can talk with crowds, nor lose your virtue, and walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, yet none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. So there you go. Rudyard Kipling in. So, there we have it. 3 poems. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. If I tilt the camera this way, you may notice that I have on my badge, on my hoodie, a little badge. We are at Breaking Point, the University and College Union. So outside the physics building, daily to which I trudge to endure the labour of labs, or rather, I don't turn up, but I'm trying to change that. But there was a group of PhD students and professors on the picket line with their little signs saying, "They're cutting our pensions. They're cutting our pay." Anyway, so I took one of their leaflets. I took their leaflets and I said, thank you. I promise to join you in this fight, this cause. And so upcoming, I'm going to have a podcast with my former tutor, a man by the name of Jonas Rademacher, to help spread the news of this injustice. So you've got that to look forward to, or not look forward to, whatever the case may be. Yeah, and then we've got a couple of other guests lined up, so you can look forward to that, should you choose to watch. Now, time for our little trusty espresso. Yeah, one of the guests is a lovely girl by the name of Kat Biggs, who you'll learn more about subsequently. But yeah, she's lovely, and she's a dear friend. She studies civil engineering. She's in her 4th year, and sooner or later we're going to form the dream team. Oh no! Poured too much. I poured too much. Look at that. It's just overflowing. Bit of surface tension. Yeah, and carry on my dad's work of building hospitals in Africa. That's what I'm passionate about. The world of global health has been, and I would say justifiably so, dominated by donations to charities and initiatives supporting AIDS, primarily AIDS and HIV, number 1, malaria, number 2, and this is in sub-Saharan Africa especially, and number 3, vaccination schemes. And I'm completely in agreement for all of those, because it's an extremely cost-effective way to help our brothers and sisters who are born into amazingly tough circumstances, especially vaccinations. So the general rule of thumb in global health and in many matters of injustice is that prevention is a far better, far more cost-effective, and probably far more sustainable way to help people. So if you can cut the problem out at source and then not have to deal with the symptoms. So if you can, for example, in homelessness, if you can, build initiatives so to prevent broken homes and the like, and whatever you call them, youth clubs, and general social fabric and support, then you can catch this early, and once things go pear-shaped, trying to fix something that has been broken for a number of years is very difficult to do. And it's kind of like playing, no, that's a terrible analogy. I was going to say kind of like playing whack-a-mole, but it's not like that. It's kind of like trying to fix a sort of a leaking pipe with sort of band-aids, and you sort of patch up one thing, and then it's leaking somewhere else, and you patch that up, and just the problem. Anyway, I digress. So preventative measures, vaccination, very cost effective. However, it's very interesting, the world of global surgery has been very much neglected, because conditions like clubfoot, which is what my dad is very much interested in, are not matters of life and death. So clubfoot is an ailment or condition. If I show you my feet, it will become clearer. So imagine I'm born normally, like this is normal feet. This is club feet. And sort of clues in the name, it kind of look a little bit like golf clubs. Give it a Google if you want. And it's a little bit annoying, to say the least. It's not quite the same as being paralyzed via your spinal cord. But it does mean you can't walk properly. And in the UK, our incredible NHS takes care of that, and there's a great support system and so on. But if you're born in rural Africa and you can't walk properly, think about it. You can't go to school, because often you have to walk a number of miles to go to school. You can't play football or run around if you're a boy. If you're a girl, you can't, well, I mean, I'm adhering to terrible gender stereotypes. I mean, girls love to play sport, and boys also love to be beautiful, but it's tough. And then you get eventually neglected by, the community, and feel a bit ostracized, and you're a burden to your family. And in some really backwards part, you sort of labeled as kind of having a sort of evil spirit within you, or demonic. Anyway, so it's just like you could do without that. And again, in terms of prevention, if someone's trying to treat someone who's had clubfoot for 30 years and has been walking on these or hobbling about on these crooked feet, and it's very difficult to treat that, and requires surgery, like cutting feet open, and very expensive. However, if you catch it early, before the age of sort of 3 or 4, children's bones are very malleable, and so it's not an invasive procedure. You don't need to cut anything open. All that it requires, it's called the Ponseti method. It just requires the gentle bending of the feet outwards over a period of 6 months, and then putting them in a brace, come back a month later, bend them a little bit more, put them in a brace, and so on. And then within 6 months, hey presto, they got feet. You can feel beautiful again, and you can run, you can go to school, and all the rest of it. And so it only costs like 250 quid, and you can change an entire child's life. And economically, they're no longer a burden, but they can support their own family and contribute to the economy of a society and work. And anyway, so there's all sorts of gains. So my dad has both my parents are doctors, and he's an orthopedic surgeon by trade, which deals in bones, which makes sense. But yeah, as a side hustle, shall we say. So I grew up in Malawi until the age of 5, so I wouldn't have remembered much if we hadn't been back. But anyway, I'll tell you about that more another time. But so my dad has built 3 hospitals now, and been involved in a number of others. So the first one being in Blantyre, Malawi, where we lived, sort of 2003, and then we moved back to England in 2005, and then he built one sort of remotely in Lusaka, Zambia, and then Zimbabwe. So Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe all sort of border each other. And the one in Zimbabwe only opened last year, so that's where I was in my gap years, and that was by far the hardest one to build, because Zimbabwe has a much more complicated history. I think I touched on that in my first podcast, in terms of a much more corrupt and violent regime, Robert Mugabe being sort of up there with the likes of Pol Pot and Stalin, but I mean, not really up there with them, but you know, back when he was alive, you may remember he wasn't exactly the Dalai Lama, shall we say, to pick a name. Yeah, and on top of that, all that corruption and red tape that comes along with all that, and people only wanting to do things for bribes, but, you know, trying to do things by the book, means that there's a lot of waiting around, and you have to say, no, we're not going to do that, and then people make it difficult, and then on top of that, the economy kept collapsing. You'll remember that Zimbabwe had massive inflation, and I've got somewhere in my house a $100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note, which is absurd, totally absurd. So many zeros, I can't even count the number of zeros. Probably could, but let's not go there. And then eventually they switched to the US dollar. Now they've introduced a new Zimbabwean dollar, but there's a lot of inflation. Anyway, when an economy crashes, and it's a lot. But we got there in the end. So yeah, building hospitals. So Cat Biggs, if you're listening, the dream team is on. I'll use your engineering skills, and I don't really have any qualifications or skills to offer, but I have a whole lot of enthusiasm, and that's what counts. That will get you most of the way there. So yeah, yeah, let's say hello to Muffin again. She seems to have quietened down, which is good. Muffin, what are you saying? Good. I haven't even tasted my espresso yet, so let's enjoy it. So we're at 20 minutes. I don't want to ramble on, although I do like rambling on. So I need to think of something interesting to say. There are all sorts of things I could say. I bought a whole bunch of new posters. So I could take you around a tour of those. But I'll save that for another time. I'll show you some sort of fidgety things I bought. So I'm trying to rekindle my love of physics. So I'm studying physics, but I really haven't been interested in it for a while now. And I had sorry for the rustling. I had a tutorial yesterday, and we ended up talking about a gyroscope, and anyway, I'll just be very brief. But for the physically inclined among you, for the first time I sort of understood. So in school you study linear motion, and something sort of operates on there's no, it can be treated as a point particle, there's no rotational motion of the body. Anyway, so linear motion. And then you've got circular motion. And so that requires the calculation of an inertial center of mass, as opposed to just the mass of a point particle. And then finally, so that's on a 2D plane. And then there's gyroscopic, and then the third sort of level is going into 3D space, and you're considering rotational motion, but the plane is changing as it. And so an excellent model of this is the gyroscope. Anyway, so I went down to Cabo Circus in Bristol, which is the main shopping district, and tried to buy a gyroscope, but nowhere sells a gyroscope, which I was very disappointed with. So instead I bought just some general, because I was like, yeah, anyway, so I'm trying to rediscover this joy, this passion of physics, because without being passionate about something, you're just hitting against a brick wall trying to study it. Anyway, so I thought a gyroscope would get me excited. So at some point I will get one. I have to get one online, but anyways, but I bought a fidget spinner instead. And then one of these little twisty things. So although they're not don't have a lot of physics involved, although you could say this can have some topology involved, and this is obviously 1 degree, two-dimensional circular motion, whatever. But I am a bit of a sort of fidgeter, shall we say. I definitely suffer from ADHD, although I don't like to sort of claim victimhood status, but I can enjoy these in lectures and so on. Not that I turn up to lectures, but I will have to start turning up to them if I'm going to take this whole degree thing seriously. So yes, so that's my life. Tell me about yours. Oh wait, I can't hear you through the camera. However, I would love for you to drop me a line in the comments and tell me about how your life is going. I promise it will be a confidential thing. Anyway. Yes, you're probably bored by now, so maybe I'll end it early. I would end it with another poem. But which one? Let's end it with a Shakespeare speech. Not a poem. So, to be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. No, we won't do that one. My favourite Shakespeare speech at the moment is probably King Richard III, his opening speech. I'm going to get this wrong, but This is basically King Richard III is probably the greatest villain, perhaps, along with Lady Macbeth in Shakespeare. It goes, now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this sun of York, and all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up as monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry meetings. And now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful enemies, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. I just love that image. He capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am rudely stamped, and not made to court an amorous looking glass, I, that am curtailed of fair proportion, and cheated by nature, by dissembling nature to something. Anyway, he witters on, complaining about, so he's a hunchback, and he's got, in fact, we discovered King Richard III's skeleton, I believe, in some town like York, which would make sense, because he refers to the son of York. Anyway, I'm not, anyway, and then, so he's a villain, and then he goes, because I am not fit to prove a lover, I am determined to prove a villain. Plots have I laid. And then the whole play follows on, and then he ends up killing children, kidnapping them. And yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time. Bye.